of Morning Roast. Featuring
Fillmore's finest, Monte Hill. The pride of the Excelsior, Joe Butcher Boy Shasky. You're listening to 95.7 The Game, the Morning Roast.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about being a fill-in is, you're on a show and they have the billboard. This guy, he's great, that guy. And then it's like, well, they're not here today.
Do I have to be Shasky? I've already drank my ghost energy. Do I have to just start screaming?
Yeah.
Put him on the bench!
Channel your inner Shasky. There's a little Shasky in all of this.
It's somewhere in there. I have a little bit of passion. It's usually
You have a lot of it.
It's usually in the evening, not in the mornings.
Okay.
But at this point,
that's between you and the missus.
When you guzzle down 600 milligrams of caffeine, you better be wired.
Mm-hmm. Are you or Sam Lubin more caffeine today?
He had a bang energy, so we would have to compare and contrast and see what has more. But I would say they're about the same.
Okay.
It's science.
I drank the full
bouncing off
thing.
the
I don't know
walls
if he
today.
did. He's always bouncing off the walls.
I know. He's Charlie Walter. I'm Kevin Michael Whitey Gleason. In for Bonta and Butch today. I'll be in next week, by the way. I don't know. Are you in next week? You coming in next week in the morning? Yep. Yeah. Okay. Open invite if you want to pop in. We have been talking a lot today, of course, about the two newest Giants, but we're going to talk about the 49ers now. And let me just once again restate this. Last time I was on with Charlie, which was September, Charlie was, I kid you not, trying to convince me that, hey, this guy Brock Purdy, I'm telling you, there's something there.
I gamble on a lot of Big 12 football. I watched a lot of Brock Purdy. He was good.
What did I say when you tried to convince me?
You said he's not getting a job over Nate Sudfeld.
Right. I did. You were right. And now Brock Purdy, oh my goodness. And it turns out some of the numbers would indicate that he's playing even better than we think. And with more on that, nice enough to join us, staff writer for Niners Nation, Jordan Elliot with us on 95.7 The Game. Jordan, are you all set for a glorious holiday sports weekend?
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually in Denver visiting some family, and I flew in, and it was minus 30 when I landed last night. So I'm all hunkered down and ready to just stay inside and watch sports till it gets a little bit warmer.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That sounds terrible.
Weather outside is frightful. Jordan, we appreciate your time, especially during the holidays. We all see that Brock Purdy's playing, with a lot of confidence, and he's winning. What do the advanced metrics tell us about how he's playing so well and how he's winning?
I think the biggest thing is just the comfortability that he's had throwing downfield. He's been 9 of 11 on throws that have gone 10 or more yards downfield and outside the numbers, which is an area of the offense that really hadn't been there consistently for the 49ers passing game. I think just his willingness to take those shots that are built in within the offense downfield has given them a huge boost, especially when you consider the natural growing pains that are going to come with a guy who's getting his first real action at the NFL level. So I think just having that ability to not be shy, to let it rip when you get guys like George Kittle who are, getting open on coverage busts, and you have guys like McCaffrey running those go routes outside the numbers. So what he's put on tape in the first couple weeks is just absolutely incredible. The thing I just keep coming back to is the comfortability and the instincts are there, which has just been phenomenal for them. You have such a strong team around him that you really just needed the guy to come in and, keep the car on the road and just keep the ship going steady. And he's done much more than that. It's absolutely phenomenal when you consider how the season's gone. They're on their third quarterback, and they're playing as good as they've played all year.
Purdy's inserted, and first of all, good talking with you today, Jordan. Purdy's inserted against the Dolphins. He's down 7-3 when Purdy comes into the game, leads the 49ers to an easy victory over Miami. Then the next weekend, the storyline is Brock Purdy may get exposed on the national stage against the Buccaneers. I was talking to some of the beat writers, not going to throw out any names before the game in the tunnel. And some of the beat writers, some of the beat writers were saying that, Brock Purdy may struggle in this game against Tampa, and that defense may give him some fits. Nope. Mission accomplished. Oh, Brock Purdy may struggle on the road, takes down Seattle, no issues there. At what point, what does Brock Purdy have to do for people to, stop saying, pump the brakes on Brock Purdy and say, let's ride. This player's a QB1 in this league.
If you haven't bought in at this point, I don't know what else you can do. The only other thing I can really think of is, they're going to have a home playoff game now for sure, and it looks like he's in line to start that. So maybe that's ultimately what's going to sell people. But like you just said, how can you not buy in at this point? Coming in cold against a really tough Miami team, And he did a great job keeping them in that game and ultimately winning that game by double digits. And then you go up against Tom Brady and a much tougher Bucs defense than I think people give them credit for. They were down a couple starters in the secondary, but they're still a top 5 defense this year against the pass. So I thought that was really what sold me. But when you go into Seattle and you play the way that he did on a short week while he's hurt, he has the oblique injury. You could tell that there were some labored throws in that game, and for him to gut through that and play the way that he did in that hostile environment and in the area and the city that's just given the 49ers so many problems over the last decade, I think the guy's done everything and then some that he possibly could have. But I feel like at this point, if anybody's holding out, if he wins a playoff game too, at that point, you're just choosing to ignore what the guy's done at this point. So I think he's legit, and he's every bit what he's looked on tape so far. And I think you're just seeing a guy who, the words I keep coming back to are just instincts and like comfortability. He just looks like a natural playing the position, and he looks like a guy that you can tell is putting in the work behind the scenes. You can tell is really working to understand the offense and put in the film study and do all the things that you'd expect out of a quarterback that's going to play at a high level in this league. So it's just a fascinating story. I just keep coming back to the fact the 49ers lost 2 starting quarterbacks, and they're still a playoff team that has every bit of the look of a contender as any other team in the league right now. It's just truly fascinating.
It is. It's amazing. We're getting ready for the 49ers in Washington tomorrow with Jordan Elliot, staff writer from N Squared or Niners Nation. Jordan, as you know, Kyle Shanahan has been talking up the Washington defense all week long. That's what coaches do. What will Brock Purdy see from the Commanders' defense that he perhaps hasn't seen yet as a pro?
I would say probably just the interior pressure that they can bring is something that I don't feel he's seen from the 3 games that he's played a lot of action in so far. Duran Payne and Jonathan Allen are 2 of the better interior defensive linemen in the league. They've both combined for 84 pressures this season, and their ability to really generate pressure up the middle is going to be a big test for that interior offensive line for the 49ers, which has been fantastic this season. Jake Brendel got named as a Pro Bowl alternate. Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford have been fantastic. But I don't think they've seen a tandem like that on the inside. So I think that's really going to be the biggest test is how is he going to be able to hold up if maybe the interior of that pocket isn't holding up as well as it has, and he has to get the ball out a little bit quicker, and he has to really deal with that pressure up the middle. We've seen him do a fantastic job of extending plays and getting out of the pocket when the pressure's coming off the edge, but I don't think there's been a caliber of interior pass rush that they're likely to see this week. So that's the big thing I want to keep an eye on is how can the 49ers interior offensive line hold up, and when they do inevitably get beat, because again, Washington's fantastic. I don't think it's an indictment on the 49ers offensive line. If they do get beat a couple plays here or there, how is Purdy going to respond to that? Because I think that interior pressure is something that even the best quarterbacks in the league struggle with from time to time. So I'm really interested to see what Purdy does when that inevitably happens.
All right, let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball, Jordan. Javon Kinlaw back, ready to go, it sounds like, for the stretch run. How big an addition is Javon Kinlaw to this team right now?
I think it's huge because while the interior defensive line has performed very admirably in his absence, they were starting to lose bodies pretty quickly, and they were getting really thin there. So just having another healthy body in itself is tremendous at this point in the season. But Kinlaw is a guy that is so good at doing things that won't show up on a stat sheet, and I think that's why there's so much doubt with where he's been as a player in the couple years in the league, because people want to go to sacks and forced fumbles and all these metrics that are going to show up in a box score. But what it won't tell you is the double teams that the guy's eating, the way he's able to free up other rushers when they call these twists and stunts on the defensive line. So I think getting a player of his caliber back is not only going to help them with the direct impact he'll have against the run, but also freeing up guys like Charles Omenihu and Nick Bosa to run these twists and stunts and other things on the defensive line. He's such a rare athlete. The guy is 6'6", 300 pounds, and has a six-pack. Like he's a true one-of-a-kind athlete that's in the upper percentile in a league filled with guys who are just athletic freaks across the board. And I think getting a guy like that back will only serve to help an already stacked defensive line. Jordan
Elliot, our guest from Niners Nation. And Jordan, I'm going to toss you really a multi-tentacled question. I apologize, but take it where you will. Grab onto whatever you want here. Talking about the NFC playoff field. What do you think it ends up looking like? Where do the Niners slot? And when it comes to the Vikings, Charlie and I have been going back and forth on this. Are the Vikings frauds? Charlie, like a lot of people, including all Cowboy fans, I think is saying, it's Kirk Cousins. You don't have to worry about them. There's something about that comeback over the Colts and that win over the Bills. I'm not ready to label them frauds. How good are the Minnesota Vikings? How do the 49ers end up fitting into this overall NFC playoff picture?
Well, I'll start with the Vikings. I think the Vikings' biggest problem is they've just been inconsistent week to week, but I do think they're a team where if you catch them when they're firing on all cylinders, they're a very tough opponent. And I think Kirk Cousins is a guy who gets a lot of flack for what he's done in the league and what he's capable of doing. People always say he doesn't have the big win. He had a pretty big win a couple years ago against New Orleans in the playoffs, so he's shown he's capable of having that performance on that stage. Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, is the best receiver in football. Dalvin Cook's one of the more talented running backs in football. And they're really good at rushing the passer, and that's something that I think translates universally when you get into the playoffs. They have Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. So if you catch them on a day where all those guys are playing their best football, I do think they're a very tough out, and they are going to be a team that gives opposing teams problems. Their problem has just been that they haven't been able to sustain that consistency week after week, which is why I think they get that fraud label. And then as for the 49ers, there's not a team that I look at where I'm like, this is a terrible matchup for them on paper within the NFC. If you start talking AFC, things get a little bit trickier. But the toughest opponent for me would probably be Philadelphia, just because I think they're so stout on both sides of the line of scrimmage. But that would be such a fascinating lineup to see that 49ers defensive line go up against that Eagles offensive line. That matchup would be one for the ages. So I'm hoping that ultimately pans out. I don't know what the status will be of Jalen Hurts going forward. I think it's really unfortunate that he had to deal with that injury that he's dealing with now so late in the season when he's played so well. If he's not near 100% come playoff time, I think things get much more interesting because a team like Dallas could easily knock them off, and then you're looking at a storyline of a potential 49ers Cowboys NFC Championship game, which would be great for everybody because of the storylines and ratings that would bring. But even with Brock Purdy under center, I think the 49ers are going to focus on running the ball, and they're going to ride that number one defense and really control the flow of the game on both sides of the ball because of that. So there's not a team that I look at where I'm like, man, this is just a tough draw for the 49ers. They had a good year. They had a good run with Mr. Irrelevant, but it's time to start focusing on next year. Like, they're a genuine title contender in my eyes, and they definitely have a path to the NFC playoffs to, at the very least, get to an NFC Championship game, which would be a remarkable achievement considering all the adversity they've faced this season.
We received a call about an hour ago, and the listener basically said the 49ers' weakness right now is going to be when they play a team that has a dual-threat quarterback. Just look at what Marcus Mariota did to them. Now, granted, Nick Bosa didn't play in that game, and I know a lot of defensive players for the 49ers didn't play in that game, but I posed this question, and there has to be an answer because no one is perfect. What is the 49ers' weakness?
I think the biggest thing is still them getting in their own way, because when I look at them on paper and just from a skill set standpoint, I don't think that they have a glaring weakness really on either side of the ball. But to me, their biggest problem is the lack of discipline that's appeared at times with penalties and self-inflicted stuff in key spots. Even in that game in Seattle, they had a couple big penalties that stalled drives or extended opposing drives on the other team. So that's the biggest thing that I would keep an eye on is, can they come out and play that just clean, disciplined brand of football where they aren't giving their opponents extra downs and extending, like with that roughing the passer, which again, it's questionable by the letter of the law. It was a penalty on Nick Bosa when he hit Geno Smith in Seattle, stuff like that. Like that takes away, a pick six. And you go from having a 28-6 lead to all of a sudden Seattle's driving still with the ball only down 2 scores. If they can avoid those big, costly mistakes from a discipline standpoint, I think that, again, they're as tough out as anybody else in the league, because when you look at them on paper, especially defensively, like they're so tough at all 3 levels. They've shown the ability to run the ball on offense. Brock Purdy's showing that he can execute within the structure of the offense and sustain drives and force teams to honor that he's going to throw downfield. So I really think they're the biggest threat to their own success. And as long as they can stay in line and stay disciplined, they're going to be very, very tough out.
How is Brock Purdy doing what he's doing? Check it out, Niners Nation. Jordan Elliott has a story. Jordan, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Enjoy your holiday weekend, sir.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays to you guys, too.
Appreciate that. This is a holiday weekend, sports-wise, I think, Charlie, like no other that I can remember.